Hi, I'm Stefanis, a PM on Azure Functions team. Welcome to Azure Functions Live.
Hi, I'm Linda Nichols. I'm on the Global Black Belt team at Microsoft, and I love durable functions. Welcome to Azure Functions Live.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anirudh Garg. I lead the engineering team for Azure Functions. Welcome to Azure Functions Live.
Hey everyone, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. My name's Eamon O'Reilly. I'm the lead PM for Azure Functions. And today I'm joined with Anthony Chu, who hopefully you guys have seen quite a few times before on the channel. Anthony, say hello.
Hey everybody.
Hey
Glad
guys.
to be back.
It's been a while, so it's good to kind of reboot and get started and kind of let you know what's going on with Azure Functions. We definitely want you guys to ask us some questions, make it as interactive as possible. We'll hopefully be able to answer questions along the way as well as at the end. So we have a lot of content to go through. We only have 30 minutes this time, so it's fully packed. So we're going to get started pretty soon. As you know, Jeff used to lead up all of these areas, and Jeff is now kind of managing all of the application platform services, including functions. So we'll drag him back in once in a while to say hello and let you know what's going on with the larger application platform services. But we're going to focus on functions for this half hour and hopefully give you guys some insight into what's going on. So with that, you can see a lot of people are asking about where is Azure Functions Live. So hopefully, as we go forward, we'll do this every single month now. We'll try to get a format going, make sure we get lots of community engagement happening, and really appreciate any feedback you have on how we make it better, what you guys would like to see, how to get more community involvement. We definitely look at this as an opportunity to make sure we kind of hear from our advocates, people who are using functions, and just give you guys some early feedback into what we're thinking, as well as what other areas we may want to focus on. So I'll kind of kick off with what's new just in Azure Functions to give you guys some insight and talk about some of the things we are working on now, as well as what we're releasing. So first up is availability zones. So we now support in premium and dedicated plans the ability to configure your function app to balance its instances across availability zones if you're looking for enhanced redundancy. You do need to configure the app to have at least 3 instances so that they can be balanced across the zones in the region. You can learn more about this in the documentation that was recently released, but please give us feedback and try it out. So the next area that we just recently released, as you know, over the last year, we've been working to give full control to your function apps on how they communicate with other Azure services, how they integrate with your VNet, and how to control both ingress and egress to your functions. This can be a little complex for some users, so we have just released an additional option when creating your app to enable networking and guide you through how to control the inbound and outbound access, as well as access to storage. There's also a diagnostics tool we recently made available in your function app under Diagnose and Solve area that will run checks on your app to let you know if anything is misconfigured and what type of networking options you have configured. Hopefully this makes it easier for you to get started with networking options, but we'd love your feedback in this area as well. And so the next thing that we just released in preview is support for Cosmos DB v3 SDK. This continues our work to bring the latest capabilities of the underlying SDKs to the functions extensions. And it also enables identity-based connections to Cosmos, so you don't have to have secrets involved in your connection anymore. So please try that one out. It's kind of part of the larger work we're doing with identity-based connections, and the goal really is to remove you having to use secrets in your connections going forward by still taking advantage of all the latest and greatest SDK improvements. And so I think the next area that we focused on was enhanced support for distributed tracing with Java on Linux function apps. So this enables you to get a much better picture on integration between components during a function call, and opens up the application map in Application Insights to visualize and troubleshoot the dependencies better. And so the continued work we're doing with Application Insights, bringing all these great capabilities into all the different languages we support, as well as across both Windows and Linux, is kind of a theme that we focus on. And hopefully this opens up a lot more scenarios when you're doing this detailed tracing and troubleshooting by leveraging the latest AI integration.
That's really cool. And then I can talk about the Azure Functions Runtime 4.0. So we announced the public preview of this last week. And yeah, so now you can try it out, especially if you're using, if you want to use .NET 6 with Azure Functions. These are the folks that we're expecting to be trying out this preview, although it also works for other languages as well. And yeah, so the main thing we want to call out is that please do expect some breaking changes to happen. And we're going to be posting to the app service announcements when these changes are coming, so that we can let you know how you can do your best to kind of mitigate some of them so we don't take down your app. And just to remind everybody, this is sort of like our roadmap for .NET and Azure Functions right now. So we are at the preview stage of .NET 6, and we're still on track to have .NET 6 LTS support in November when .NET 6 LTS is announced. And one thing that we're going to try out in this webcast is that we want to introduce you to some folks that are on the Functions team. So today, you're going to talk to Brett, who works on, among many other things, the .NET 6 support. So let's hear from Brett. Okay, I'm joined by Brett from the Azure Functions team. How's it going, Brett?
Hey, good.
All right, how about you tell us about what you do on Azure Functions?
Yeah, so I'm a developer on the Functions team. Primarily these days working on the Azure Functions host, which is the C# web application that runs and loads and basically hosts all the extensions and is the thing that orchestrates everything that's happening in a running function app, as well as the .NET isolated worker. And in the past, I spent some time doing things like the Cosmos DB extension, and I've contributed a decent amount to some of the storage extension improvements over the last few years as well.
Oh, wow, cool. And I understand that you've been at Microsoft for 20 years now?
20 years, yep. As of a couple months ago, yeah. When I first got hired here 20 years ago, I came on as a programming writer, is what it was called. Which today is a content developer or content writer. I basically wrote documentation for, at the time, I guess it was Visual Studio.NET. It was like 2001. It was when .NET was just kind of coming out. I believe my start date was like beta 2 or something, if I recall, when I joined. So I was writing docs for things like MS Build. That was kind of the big one. When MS Build was just becoming a new thing. After that, I was a tester, an SDET for probably like 5 years. I was a manager, an SDET lead for a couple of years. And then I guess about 10 or 11 years ago, I went remote. I live in Ohio, and I'm one of the permanent remote folks on the team. And when I did that, I went back to being an IC, an individual contributor. And so since then, I've become a developer, and I've basically been a dev for the last, 9 years or something. As far as teams go, though, across that, it's been like jumping around as Azure grew, jumping around from things like, I was on a team called WCF RIA Services for a while. That eventually became Azure Mobile Services, and then some of us kind of moved over to working on to Functions a few years ago in web jobs. So I guess the last 5 years or so have been in the web jobs or Functions area.
Wow, so you've been working on Functions since the beginning?
Pretty close to the beginning, yeah. I don't think I was the very first person, but yeah, pretty early on.
Nice. What are you working on that you're excited about?
right now, this even just earlier today, we've been meeting and talking about new features that we can add to the .NET isolated worker. So when we built it, we envisioned a bunch of extensibility points and places that customers, that developers could plug in and really control how everything flows through the worker. And a lot of that is internal today, and we have started to take some of the wraps off of that internalness, and we're looking to make a lot of it public. And it's really exciting to talk about, all the cool things that people should be able to do in the fairly near future. So that's what's got me pumped right now.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, Brett.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. That was great just meeting with Brett. I didn't even know a lot of the history he had, Anthony. So I think that was pretty cool just to, kind of bring a lot of the engineers who work on the team, give some, focus, and hopefully we'll have a lot more as we go forward as well. One thing that kind of leads into is, with a lot of your guys' help over the last, few years, Functions has been growing like crazy, with all the different capabilities and scenarios you guys are building on it, and a lot of our customers have been building. And so as part of that, we're actually growing and hiring as part of the Functions team as well. And so, a lot of our best people who join the team are, our advocates and people who work closely with the product, give us feedback. So if people are interested in joining the Azure Functions teams, we have roles across both the PM organization as well as on the engineering side. And so go to careers.microsoft.com, search for Azure Functions, and you can then select, different locations. We're hiring in Austin, Texas, if you're interested in down that area, as well as in Redmond. So please look at the jobs and, see if it might be a good fit for you or someone you could refer. So what's next? So a lot of the stuff you kind of talked about earlier that are in preview are obviously going to be working on those things to get them into GA. But there's a bunch of other things that are really exciting at the moment as well that we've been working on. And one of those is the ability to also author your functions inside of the Azure portal. And so today it's only available for Windows. And so now you'll be able to do it for Linux as well. And I think a lot of this is, for a lot of new developers, when they're just learning the service, they want to get some, quick iteration going, make sure it works for them. It's nice to be able to do it in the portal, and then they can evolve that into a full CI/CD, IDE environment as they go forward. But that will be brought out, and so hopefully that'll just make it a lot easier for you guys to, test, do some POCs, and kind of prove out the capabilities of the service. The other one is Anthony's been talking a lot about, which is our V4 GA. So that's still targeted for November. And so that's a massive release for us across, .NET 6 support, but lots of other enhancements inside of there as well. And then the other area that we talked about a little bit with the Cosmos DB a few minutes ago, but there's a lot of other extensions that we support as well for identity-based connections. And so that kind of roll-up and the bindings will be released later on this year. Hopefully, November, December is when those will come out, and you'll be able to go into full GA with all identity-based connections across all supported bindings. So lots of stuff.
Yep, and then another one that's coming up this week is a conference that you can check out. Run this over 2 days, and we have Anna here to tell us more about it.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman from the Azure SQL team, and I wanted to share a little bit of information about an event we're putting together with the community called Azure ServerlessConf. It's happening on September 29th and September 30th across 3 various time zones. So regardless of where you are, you should be able to catch it in your own time zone. And the purpose of this event was to have a free virtual developer event focused on building event-driven applications using Azure serverless technologies. Now, we're including things like Azure Functions, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Logic Apps. This is a really exciting kind of coming together of a bunch of different products and a bunch of different folks from around the world. We have MVPs, we have community speakers, and we have Microsoft speakers as well. And we're going to be engaging you live on Learn TV. So if you want to register, you can head over to the registration page And then you can scroll down and register for the time zone that makes sense for you. But know that we will have live and on-demand types of sessions. And then you can even check out all the wonderful sessions across each of the various time zones. And you'll even find me speaking in one of the sessions. Oh, here it is. So with all that being said, I hope that you'll come and join us and register for the Azure ServerlessConf. And Anthony's going to be there too. So thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, that was great. So everyone, please sign up at aka.ms/Azure ServerlessConf. I think that's the URL.
I don't think it's clickable, so hopefully that'll go to it.
Yeah, well, everyone try to click your screen now, see what happens. All right, as in our kind of webcast tradition, we have a bunch of community highlights to go through. So we're just going to go through a few of them. And the first one is Tamir has a post about how to get started with dev containers on and Azure Functions. So you can actually run a full dev environment locally in a Docker container without installing any of the tools or the language SDKs or anything like that. So check it out. And I think they also have, like Tamir also has a talk at the Azure ServerlessConf. And another kind of pretty cool thing that's that came out about a month or two ago is this project called Cloud Katana. It's done by an internal team at Microsoft, and they're using PowerShell durable functions to orchestrate, or basically like orchestrate the simulation of some security scenarios. So they actually use PowerShell durable functions to, I think, configure some environments and then attack it to see what happens. And I saw that Jonah was on the call, and I saw that Roberto, who works on this, mentioned that that we had some community help with this as well, and Jonah and as well as Barbara helped out a bit with that. So thanks for that. And this is also another good one by Charlotte about just how to use dependency injection in Azure Functions. In this case, they're using Neo4j as a client. But you can kind of take this pattern for any database client that you want to have just a singleton of, so you're not kind of creating a new client for every invocation. And then Sander has a blog post about mapping GPS devices with Azure Functions and Azure SignalR Service. Basically, anytime I see an article about SignalR Service, it will make it into this list. So. So if anyone wants to be on this list,
like your pet project, Anthony. If the more we get on that, the better.
Yeah, and they tend to look great because you can put stuff on the map. And things move around in real time. They end up, you end up building some pretty cool projects with it.
I think I'm going to write one now just to get on here.
Yeah, that's right. So here's one by Simon about how to use Playwright to check for stock, basically check for stock when stock is available for an Xbox. So I'm not a gamer, but apparently Xboxes are really hard to come by. And he actually wrote basically a timer function app, I believe, that uses Playwright to check the website for stock and alert them when there's new stock. So some very useful of like a really good use for Playwright in Azure Functions. Another one that I want to plug, last month, a few of us were on a Hello World Live stream about serverless. So we talked about Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and also static web apps as well. So check that out from last month. And then another thing that some folks on our team have been involved with is it's an organization called Bit Project, and they have a bunch of students. We're going to hear a little bit more about it in a second. That basically learn about serverless, and they use Azure Functions. So last month they had their final projects for the summer semester, and they're available on YouTube. And all these links, I'm going to share a page after. You can actually go and grab the links in a bit. But to actually learn a little bit more about Bit Project, I kind of chatted with Shreya a couple days ago. All right, so I'm joined by Shreya Gupta from Bit Project. Hey, Shreya.
Hi, Anthony. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So can you tell us a bit about Bid Project and how you got involved?
Yeah, so Bit Project is a student organization that originally started off as just a very small club at UC Davis. Me and my friends were just kind of discussing how we can take some time out of our own, projects that we were working on the side and convert them into workshops that we can use to help other students learn. We've all had our own struggles at learning at college, especially when you're going to classes with like 400, 600 students. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing our most to share the resources that we had with other students that were also struggling. And then around the time of the pandemic, it was an organization that kind of just expanded into like students from all around the world. So now we are a global nonprofit with students from every country that you can think of, just doing the most that we can to help students learn how to code. And right now our focus is serverless. So we are working a lot with Azure Functions. As you, Anthony, you're one of our mentors from our previous camps too, so you would know that. But hopefully we're in the future going to plan on actually expanding out to other technologies as well.
That's awesome. So how can our viewers get involved with Bid Project and the Serverless Camp?
Yeah, so we just actually finished up our previous camp with a conference as well, and we're hoping to do something just like that, but much bigger next year. So next summer is going to be the Serverless Camp 2022, and we are going to be sending out email newsletters. So if you're interested in getting involved, either as a student or as a mentor, you can definitely go to our website, bitproject.org. I think it's in the corner on that side of the screen, and sign up to a newsletter. And whenever we do send those out, we'll have more information about how you can get involved.
That is awesome. Thanks for joining us, Shreya.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
And everyone go check out bitproject.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also know that some folks in the chat have also been mentors in the program. So yeah, definitely check it out. I think the last time we had something like 20-something students. So yeah, a lot of opportunity to mentor and actually help folks with, just learning about programming in general and also about Azure Functions. And as I was saying earlier, go to this link here to get all the notes from today, including all the links and things. So next, we're going to talk about .NET 6 in Azure Functions. And we have a demo from VJ from the Visual Studio team to check out. So I'm joined by VJ from the Visual Studio team. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the demo that you're going to show?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So I lead the tooling team in Visual Studio that builds the Azure Functions tooling. Today, what I'm going to show is like the new .NET 6.0 experience for Azure Functions in Visual Studio. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new project. So we have the Azure Functions option here. I'm just going to pick the default, click Create. The first thing you can notice here is you have a new .NET 6 option that shows up here. So I'm going to pick the .NET 6 option. I'm going to create a blob trigger. So you'll see that we automatically start the Azure Storage Emulator, which is needed for the Functions app. So you'll see that it's started and ready to go. I'm going to run this app. We should be able to hit the breakpoint once a file gets added to the blob store, for example. So in order to see that, I'm going to go to the connected services. So this knows that the storage emulator is already pre-configured. I'll go here. It has an option to open the Azure Storage Explorer. The Azurite emulator is already running, so I can just go right into the blob container. There's a samples work items. This is what the code is connected to. I'll just upload a file quickly. I'll go ahead and upload this file. And we should see that once it hits, because we have the debugger already set up, you'll see the breakpoint just gets hit and it shows the file here. There are a lot more services that you can actually connect to from connected services right now. So if I click the plus, you'll actually see that there are a variety of services you can connect to. There are 3 different options for connecting to the storage. So you can either run the storage, the Azurite emulator on a container. You can run it natively, or you can actually connect to an Azure instance. You can connect to a Singular instance. You can connect to a Key Vault. app configuration, databases, Redis cache, Cosmos DB, you name it, like you have most of the developer services that you normally use as a part of this, you'll find it here. I'm going to pick the Signar service here. So what it does is it goes and finds all the Signar instances in my given subscription. So I'm going to pick a Signar instance. And you'll notice that we have already pre-populated with the connection string name that's going to be used. And there is the key. And here it tells you what kind of code changes is going to happen. So we will add the C# file, we'll add the required NuGet packages, and we'll store the secret in the secret store. So I'm going to click Finish. So once the Signar service is configured, so I'm just picking the code from the documentation here. So I'm going to go and add a quick plus. I'm going to save it. So all I need to do right now is actually create a folder here. I'm going to add a HTML file here. So this is the client file that can talk to the Signar service. So I'm going to save this file and run the app right now. So now with the connected services, it made your life so much easier where you don't have to worry about like what instances you're connecting to, where is the secret getting stored, what kind of template do I need, what package do I need? And you're already seeing like the connections are being made. So if I do F12, and it can actually see that it's talking to the Signar service, and it is getting the star count from this GitHub repo. Let's assume that you're done with all this development and you're ready to publish this app. You have the option to right-click Publish, and you can pick an actual Azure Function instance. I can pick an existing instance, and I can always go and create a new instance or select an existing instance here. And when I click Finish, you'll know what storage account the function app is connected to, and we automatically show them as configured. For the Signar, you may or may not want the same Signar instance to be used for both your local as well as remote. So we give you the option to choose the same, or you could choose a different one. The only difference here is earlier when I showed this, the option here was to store the secret in your local secret store. You have the option to either store the secret in the key vault, or you can store it in the app settings. So I can go ahead and click Finish here. It sets everything up for me. And then once the settings are done, I'm ready to go. And once I publish this app, it should just be running fine. I've just gone ahead and published the app here. So if I actually bring this up, and if I hit the endpoint API/index, you'll actually see that my Net6.0 app that's running on the cloud is actually talking to the Signar instance that I was able to set up in less than a few minutes. And then everything is nice and running at this point. So
wow, that is so nice. So you showed us .NET 6, Azure Functions, Azure right now running in Visual Studio, as well as this really cool connected experience where I don't really have to do anything with the connection strings. It's just sort of just everything just works for me.
Exactly. I mean, we want to make the developer's life extremely easy. We want to make sure that all of these passwords and things like that are kept securely in the right places. We, as a tooling team, we want to make sure that you're following the right practices, and we'll help you connect and get your app running.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yep. Thank you, Anthony.
Cool. Yeah, so check that out along with all the other stuff that I've come out for V4, including our VS Code experience has been updated for V4 as well. All right, so next we're going to move on to Q&A. And as a bit of a programming note, if anyone's watching on, for those of you watching on Learn TV, we will probably be cut off at 30 minutes after the hour. We can continue the conversation over on our YouTube channel at Azure Functions Live at that link below. All right, have there been any questions that have come in?
I was just looking over. I see some coming in now since you asked, Anthony, which is good. So let's see what's in here.
All right. I see one about, disappeared on me, about docs. Where did that come from? And where did it go? We're still trying to figure this out. how to read all this feedback. But I remember seeing that one question about docs for .NET 6 and Azure Functions V4 in general. So we will be publishing more docs throughout the month of October. We've updated our first set of docs to include V4, including a bunch of our quick starts and our version documentation, but there'll be a lot more to come in the month of October. Cool. Let's see if there's anything else in there. I think there was a question about the service, whether or not there's a service bus emulator. I am not aware of one.
No.
I think we would, yeah, that would be something that that the service bus team would have to provide, but I'm not aware of one for service bus. All right, anything else there, Eamon, that you're seeing?
There's one here around, why is there no .NET 6 isolated mode?
Yeah, so .NET 6 isolated mode does work. However, the tooling is not fully supporting it yet. So, so there's a couple of things that need to happen. One is we need to update, basically like all the tooling, listen to this tool's feed to actually understand what the different types of apps that it can support and things like that. We need to update that feed. But there are a couple of things that we need to figure out first with templates and things like that before we can light it up in our tooling. You can get it to work right now by basically just taking a .NET 5 isolated app and just changing the TFM, the framework version, to .NET 6 as well as V4 for the function version, and that should work. You can actually use that locally with the core tools right now and deploy using core tools, and I think you can even edit those apps using Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. But full, found new project to publish experience in VS and VS Code, they'll be coming in October. What else? Okay, what else are we seeing here?
I see one which I don't have the full answer to, which is, the connected services we saw inside of VS, is the relationship to kind of like setting up logic apps, is the idea that they're similar. I think the way connected services is really about making it easy to connect into those services. So then you can author code against those services, without having to kind of manually do all the connections up yourself. Whereas, the logic apps connections have, all the methods available as well that are more, trying to combine not just the connection, but the functionality as well through low code. Whereas the connected services, I believe, are more about connecting you up and then allowing you to code against them.
Yeah. So that connected experience in VS is really good for setting up. Like if you have a dependency on, in that video, signal our service, it will, help you get that connection string set up locally as well as in the cloud. I believe it'll even deploy some of these things as well. A lot of things have emulators now, and it'll actually start up those emulators locally for you as well.
Yeah, and I think the other part to that question was, and I see one down further around, these Azure connectors for functions, where we're, kind of allowing you to integrate in with some of the Logic Apps connectors. I think that's still an area that we're investigating. I don't think we have any more information on it right now, but it is something that, ever since we enabled the Logic Apps to run on top of the functions runtime, as the next iteration of Logic Apps capabilities, so you can do authoring, debugging locally. It does open up more capabilities at the functions level for that seamless integration with Logic Apps as well. So that was one area we're investigating, which we still are, but no kind of update on that right now. But it's something we can kind of continue to investigate, and maybe we can give an update at the next month's call.
Yep, sounds good. I see a question here about is durable functions going to work with .NET isolated mode? We're working on that right now. So our goal is to get this enabled sometime in 2022, hopefully in the first half of 2022. But that is still work that we need to do. There's quite a bit of significant work there to be done to light this up. But that is our plan, so that for .NET 7, the isolated mode will be a viable solution, even if you need something like durable functions. And I see a question here about can you use minimal APIs in .NET 6? So in .NET 6, the ASP.NET team has been pushing a lot on basically like the ability to build ASP.NET apps in basically a single file without, a namespace or a class. You just write a bit of code. It actually looks like Node if you kind of stare at it and you squint a little bit. So some folks have been asking whether or not we can do this with Azure Functions as well. So there are a couple of things that we're investigating. One is can we, have kind of like the program.cs file be simplified so that we can kind of take some of those learnings or basically some of the capabilities of the minimal APIs and have them kind of available to Azure Functions. So you don't have to have a namespace, you don't have to have a class. That looks like it's it's possible, but we haven't invested a ton in that yet. And we're also talking with the ASP.NET team to see how we can collaborate on maybe even a common model between ASP.NET and in Azure Functions for a minimal API. But that's really early on in the conversations. But hopefully, if you have feedback, do let us know. All right, see what else we have here. So there's one about .NET. So the current .NET app in the .NET 5 app isolated. So by the time .NET 6 release, is it going to be able to? Are you going to be able to move it to .NET 6 without significant change? Because the isolated worker is basically just a DLL, or basically it's a NuGet package. So you can actually run .NET 5 or .NET 6 on the same SDK. So as far as how it works with Azure Functions, there should be no change at all. But some of the capabilities that you get with .NET 6, especially if you want to do some of the minimal API stuff, which we don't quite fully support yet, those will be the changes, right? So if you want to start using the new language features and the new C#, then you would have to make some changes. But you should just be able to change a .NET 5 app to .NET 6 and run it in isolated mode without any other significant changes.
Yep, and I see one asking about logic apps. Is there a way to extract the code of the logic app? I think that's already available in logic apps. I know when you go to, when you author logic app, you have the designer view, but you can switch over to the code view and be able to see it there as well. So you should be able to pull down the code already inside of the logic apps. Let me know if there's something that's not working with that, but it should be available.
Okay, great. Let's take one more. We just have to kind of go through the list here. Yeah, here's one. So when create a new function app, why don't we enable managed identity by default and connect storage to it using that instead of a connection string? Do you know of any plans, Eamon, about us kind of migrating there once we have the new extensions and basically have the identity-based stuff all ready to go?
Yeah, no, that's definitely an area we're looking at. I think the first part, like you said, Anthony, is just getting the GA of the extensions out that we talked about earlier. But then once that's enabled, we're definitely looking at trying to enable it by default, just to make sure it's as seamless as possible so that you can do all the connections. Obviously, there's a bit more involved. Once you do a managed identity, you kind of have to configure both, not just the managed identity on the app, but then the access to the services you're talking about and grant managed identity there. And so, in the portal where you have the auth and everything set up, things can be a lot more streamlined. But we just want to make sure the experience works across, all the different clients you might be developing function apps in. But it's definitely an area. I mean, the recommendation, I think, once we go GA is use managed identities over secret connections for all services that support them, which is why we're investing so much in it. So yeah, we're definitely going to be looking at that. We just want to make sure we have some consistent experience as much as possible for all the clients. like
I think we can call this an episode. I think we can still kind of, chat. Like we say, if there are any more questions, we can probably respond in chat after the stream. But yeah, this has been hopefully a good reboot.
The first of many.
Yeah, hopefully we're getting it renewed and we can come back next month. But yeah, hopefully that this has been a good format for everybody. Yeah, give us feedback on the new format. We are trying to shorten the show a little bit so that we can kind of condense the information a bit especially for folks who are watching, as well as it's a better format for Learn TV as well. Cool. And with that, I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.